Hello and welcome to Cayuse IRB version 1.9 release update. Just a quick overview of what 1.9 included. Analysts can now administratively close or withdraw studies. We did add an archive tab that stores closed and withdrawn studies, so they'll now be separate from active studies. We added an end meeting button to the meeting details page, so now you'll have the ability to start a meeting as well as end the meeting with those two buttons. We added a list view tab to the meetings page. Analysts can now add attachments to both the meetings and the study details pages. We also added a configurable message banner that when a message is input would appear at the top of Cayuse IRB after a user logs in. And we redesigned the reporting page, as well as included several other enhancements and bug fixes. So let me end the slideshow. So I'm currently logged in to Cayuse IRB as an analyst, and the first thing I'll go over is the updates that we made to the message templates area. One of the things that we did was we got feedback about the tags that were included in the email message templates. So I'll just open up this one real quick. We did make some updates into how these tags are listed, as well as what they do and the general information related to these tags. We did also get feedback that, for instance, if you had included an analyst or analysts, it wasn't actually populating correctly, so we fixed those bugs. And we also updated the additional reviewers text and other text within all of these variables here. So I go back. In the notifications area, we updated the certifications text area, so now it's a big box with rich text editing capabilities. And you'll notice that we now have a system notification. So when this is actually completed, and I'll add something, so we can say IRB office is closed Monday, May, when is this is obviously far out, but we'll just say Monday, May, I believe it's May 25th for Memorial Day. And we can save that. So this is now a custom message, and if I actually refresh this page, you'll notice that I now have a slide out that says the office is closed. So anytime this system message has information in it, it will display. I can close it and it won't populate again. So if I go back to the dashboard, the slide over won't come up, but you can keep that system message in. A user can make it go away by closing it and go about their day, but the next time they log in or refresh the page, it will show up again. So for instance, refreshing, and it will show. There we go. Go back to the message templates. We also made some updates to this specific email, so it's kind of confusing that this was the only one that was left blank. So we now have a tag for attendees. When you're in the actual meeting getting ready to send the agenda, this attendees will populate with all of the names of the meeting attendees. So those are the updates to the message templates. Now we'll go to the reporting. So we did update this page, the actual report create page. So if I go in and create a new report, you'll notice it is updated. So you do have your report name like normal, so we can say this is study reporting information. And then now on the left-hand side, you'll have both your study information as well as your audit information. I can add these by clicking on the plus icon. We did also add co-principal investigators as a report field, but I can have, for instance, my study label, my study title, the submission status, submission type, and we can go in and audit information, and I can say total time for review. I can save this, and then you also have the option to preview, which is a slide out, and it will show the first 20 records for you, which is different than our previous report, which would show only the first 5. It takes a second to load, but once it does, you can preview your report fields. So these report fields are essentially the columns, similar to how it was before. And then you can run that report, and it will run that CSV for you. So those are the updates to the reporting. And now I'm going to go back to the dashboard, and you'll notice down here the report CSV. And I'm going to go into 2016-32. So this is currently under the pre-review. A review type board has been assigned, currently expedited, but I'm actually going to change it to full board. You'll notice now that you have the option, regardless of whether a meeting's been assigned to do a full expedited review. This was more because of how Legacy works, but we did get some feedback that certain institutions do a full expedited review for modifications or renewals. And our full expedited review means that it goes through an expedited pathway, but is actually a full board review. So it's essentially like a subcommittee review. So this is available regardless of whether a meeting has been, a submission has gone to a meeting or a specific decision type has been selected. But I'll select medical IRB and save this and proceed forward. And I'm going to assign this to a meeting. Actually assign reviewers first, so we'll say Jeffrey and John Heldens. Where is he? There we go. And save. And proceed forward, and I'm going to assign it to a meeting. And there's one today by chance, so we'll add it to there. And now I'm actually going to go to this meeting. So we'll go to the meetings page and go here, and you'll notice the addition of this attachments tab. So first we'll just say that this meeting, we have our attendees here. Obviously we need John Heldens and all these guys. So we'll add them. I can go to my attachments tab. Let's say you did want to maybe add some sort of continuing education documents to the meeting. You can now do that. It does say who uploaded and when it was uploaded. Currently, this permission is only available to an analyst, and any reviewer that has access to the meeting would be able to go in and download this document. But I'll show you again the send agenda. It was all the attendees, but it will list, or it had that attendees tag in the message template area, but now it lists all of the attendees. You still have the option to, carbon copy or blind copy people or add additional attendees as needed. I'm not going to send that though. And I'm going to start the meeting. And now you'll notice at the top there is, once it starts the meeting for me, the end meeting button. One other thing we did change was previously when you selected agenda or minutes, it would actually download the attachment. We made it consistent with other PDFs and how they operate in Cayuse IRB, so it does open into a new tab and you're not forced to download the attachment. So I can go to my full board reviews and just say that, results, and we'll just do this real quick. Let's say it was approved today. John Heldens motioned for the approval and Jeffrey Barton seconded. We can say, zero. One person abstained one person recused themselves, and I don't remember who had the conflict of interest, but we'll just save that. And let's say this meeting is over now. The end meeting button just is another way to end the meeting early. and it will also include it on your minutes. So when I open the minutes document, it will say when the meeting started and when the meeting was adjourned, and it does date and timestamp that and include who actually ended the meeting. We'll go to back to the studies. Actually, before we do that, I want to show that we did create two new template types. You'll now notice the administrative withdrawal and administrative closure. An administrative withdrawal is essentially a way to close out studies that have been created. So you have an initial submission that's been created and maybe the PI left the institution and it's just sitting there hanging out. You can do an administrative withdrawal to close out that initial, and it would move into the archived area. So it can be a very, generic template. If you want to see what I did for this one, it's really just a, essentially a brief explanation for why you're withdrawing that specific study from the system. So, and then there's a text box. And I think, additionally, same thing with the administrative closure. This is a way where an analyst can close out a study that maybe has gone way past the expiration, or again, the PI left the institution and it's an ongoing study that needs to be closed out. So you have the ability to create these templates. They obviously do need to be published in order to use them. But if I go to the studies, you'll notice here that there's now the addition of an archive area. So we have both active and archive. Once a study is archived, meaning it's either been withdrawn, closed, or disapproved, those studies and all their associated submissions will move into this archive area. You still have the ability to search. They will no longer be listed in the dashboard under the submissions by type, so this will truly be a count of all of your active submissions. But in order to show this, let's say I went to the archived area and actually active area rather, sorry, and I want to find one that is expired. And so we'll do this one here, football concussion study. So I'm going to add a new submission. You'll notice that an analyst now has this ability, and I can add an admin closure here. And so it will open up, the submission details, and I can complete that submission. And it will have me fill out a submission like an investigator on the research team would normally do. So why is this study, brief explanation for why this study is being closed. This is really more of a way to document why. So this study is being closed because it expired. And the PI needs to submit a brand new study. So I'm going to save that. I can complete the submission, and it's going to ask if I want to move forward. Yes, I do. And it will take me to a place where I can manage my letters. Again, this doesn't necessarily need to go out to the investigator. You can send it to yourself. If you, for instance, made mistakes and you need to go back, you can return to that same screen. I can make my edits. It'll show up in task history. I can complete my submission again. So you can go back and forth. It's not, final. But this doesn't go to the board because it's an administrative process. I can manage my letters though. I don't know if there's a closure letter in here. I'll remove that and add myself. And we'll say nope, there is no closure template. So I can't do that right now, but let's go into a letter template, add one real quick. We're going to say admin closure. It is for an admin closure. So you do have a new letter template type. We'll say this is active, and I'll just say this is to document that the study is closed. You would obviously want to put additional information in here, but real quick, I just wanted to do this. And so when I go back to my my submissions, and this one is currently listed in my submissions. It would be listed in my tasks as well. So if I click on view all, it would be here as well, this admin closure under the post review step. So now when I go to manage letters, I'll be able to add a letter. And we'll again remove this and put myself in. And then we'll select our letter template, admin closure. So here we go. Of course, I could add in my additional variables if I wanted to, but I'm not going to do that. So I'll save that and go to my submission details and just say that the review is complete. And then this will close the study. Once it is closed, it will move into that archived area. So the review is complete. When I go to the study details, you'll notice that it is closed. There is now, we also added the addition of a close date to the study details. And one thing you'll also notice is the addition of an attachments. So similar to the meetings, an analyst can add attachments to studies now. So I can pull up here, add it, and then anyone that has access to the study will be able to view these attachments. So this is really meant for, sponsor attachments, anything related to the entire study or project. But I can click on this and download it or delete it as an analyst. Let's go to the next page. Okay. So let's go to log in as John Heldon. So now I'm actually logged in as a researcher and a reviewer. One thing to note, let's see if I go in, for instance, just to this real quick. One of the things that we heard as feedback was that even if you were a researcher, you still had the checklist button here, which is grayed out. So we actually removed that. So if you are a researcher, you'll never see that checklist button. And one thing that we also fixed was that researchers will now have the ability to edit their titles. This ability was previously only for an analyst, so now I can say Fullerton is great and update that, and it will update. One thing also is that when this title is updated, it will actually flow into reporting. Previously, if you did update your title, it wasn't updating in reporting, so that bug has been fixed. So if I go back to my studies and I want to pull up an approved, actually let's go to submissions. Let's find a renewal that's in process. And we'll do submission type and renewal. What I wanted to show is that you'll now have the ability to, so this is currently under review. You'll now have the ability to add, when I go to the study details, the ability to add either a modification at the same time, as well as incident reports and a closure if necessary. So previously, when a renewal is in process, you couldn't add any additional submissions aside from a closure. We've opened up that ability to allow a modification, so you can have a renewal and a mod in process, as well as incident reports. And we also removed the restriction on only having one incident at a time, so you can actually have multiple incidents going in instances where there was multiple events that occurred. But let's just go through here. I was one affected, just kidding. Provide a detailed, that's not required, so let's just go through this real quick just to show you that once this is submitted, that I can actually add in another incident report. Yes, I'm not actually reading any of these, but I don't know. Yes, so save, complete submission, and we'll go back to study. So this, well, let me certify real quick. Oh, I don't need, oh, who's the PI? Well, anyway, I can go back to the study details. So it's currently in certification. I'm not the PI, but I can actually add another incident and fill that out so you can have multiple incidents at the same time. You can also, so if I go back to studies and find one that's closed in the archived area, I can find one that's closed, and let's say, during the audit that occurred after the study has been closed, a reportable event happened. You can now create an incident report. The research team can to report that event. So we've opened up that ability. Previously, you couldn't. Once the study was closed, no additional submissions could be created. So we did open up that ability. So now you'll notice I can do that. Let's see. One thing I didn't show in the meetings was the list view. So up at the top, you'll notice there's month, week, and list. So list is essentially just a list of meetings from this month out 6 months. You can change the time frame, so it'll go to February 6 months ahead. It's just a different view essentially, and this is actually accessible using screen readers or assistive technology. And one other thing I didn't mention about the message templates, we were actually not recognizing the CC and BCC fields, so that was fixed, and you can now include those in your message templates, and they'll actually get sent to the people that are in that field. Another bug fix that we did was actually in review boards. Previously, when you went, if I wanted to go look here and look at a board roster at a previous date, it was actually returning an error. You'll now be able to look at those at the board roster in a previous date. We also fixed a bug that wouldn't allow analysts to add multiple files in comments. So for instance, when I'm actually reviewing a study and I want to add multiple attachments, unlike an investigator who could, an analyst couldn't. So we did open that functionality. So if I did add a comment here, I can add a file, and just to show you, we'll just add these two and apply. So they're both there. Now you can do it in one shot. Let's see. The other thing that we did was add the ability to print out your checklist to PDF. So let's just save this checklist real quick. And go to study details. Oh, here we go. Sorry. Actually, we'll go back to that one that we were just looking at. You'll notice now that the PDF actually has a little caret icon or arrow. You can print the entire submission or all checklists, or just your own checklist or a reviewer's checklist. So you have a couple different options. As a reviewer, so for instance, if I go back in as John Heldens and I go to my dashboard and change me to a reviewer and go into one of these studies where I am a reviewer, I can go in and actually print just my checklist. So again, it will open up in a new screen and you'll be able to see that. So it'll say who was completed by, the study number, and the title, and what type of submission it is. And let's see. We also updated a bug where when you imported templates, it would convert double spaces into a question mark icon. So we fixed that, as well as some formatting issues in our PDFs. So if you had, for instance, copied and pasted items from Word, it was making some weird changes in the PDFs of the submission. So we updated that, or fixed that rather. And we also did a fix where if you had a suspended study, so let me log out and log back in as Lawrence Compo and certify that incident report that we just did here. And whoops, that was not it. View all. Close this. Here we go. Certify. So I want to certify this one. And then when I go in as the analyst again to my dashboard, if I guess I just can describe it. If I do actually say that this is going to be a suspended study, previously there was no way to undo that suspension. So we now made it so that a a suspended study can be undone. There is a newly added decision type of remove suspension, and so if an incident report or and even if an incident report is processed and it suspends the study because you need to do further investigation into the incident, you can suspend it and then undo that suspension by submitting a modification to remove that suspension. And let's see. Other than that, that is, there was an issue where the letters weren't opening in IE 11, and we did fix that issue. So you will now be able to open your letters in IE 11. And that's pretty much it. If you do have any questions, please contact support. They'll be happy to answer those questions or forward them to me if they cannot answer them. And this release is going out on April 9th. We'll be sending out release notes shortly. Thank you.